Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. Penn State takes care of Delaware 63-7. We'll have some thoughts on that game, offense, defense, special teams. We'll break down a couple plays in the film room as well. And then we have lots of fan questions to get to. We might take a little peek at Illinois as well. Welcome into the show, everybody. Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. How are you doing today, Shawn?
Doing great, Cory. It's Monday, so we are a long way away from the weekend, and we're all trying to get there. I was happy with Penn State, and I was happy with the Miami Dolphins. If you haven't seen that, if you didn't see that, well, epic game yesterday.
Yeah, I knew we were gonna get all of like 2 seconds into the show with you without you mentioning the Dolphins. But I was happy for you, Shawn. I was also happy that I had Tyreek Hill on one of my fantasy teams.
Yeah, good day to have him. Good day to have him. So yeah, it was a good football weekend for me. It's been a good football season for me thus far in this very young season that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Penn State played a football game on Saturday and took care of business. Penn State beat Delaware 63-7. Pretty close to what your score prediction was, if I remember correctly, Shawn. If I go back in time here.
59-7 I had. And that brings up interesting question and something that I pondered during the game. Do you think Penn State should have tried to kick a field goal early in the game? To give Falcons an opportunity, because they could have.
Right. Yeah, no, they had multiple opportunities in that game to kick some field goals. A couple 4th and 4s, a 4th and 6. Definitely had the opportunity if they wanted to. I think that maybe tells you a little bit of where they kind of think that's at the moment, maybe. And so
it's a little scary then.
Yeah. And so I would have liked to seen it. There was even an opportunity a little bit later in the game for one, and just didn't happen. So no, I was with you there, but it was also nice to see how effective they were on offense. Just absolutely, just methodical throughout the entire game. So that was nice to see. Besides really one play, I thought they played pretty much perfect. So couldn't complain there at all.
No, I mean, they looked like how a top 5 to 10 team is supposed to look against a team like Delaware. And, I have respect for the Delaware program for their level. They're a top 20 team in the country, but they just don't have the guys. They don't have the horses to match up with a team like Penn State. And it showed on Saturday. And the thing is, when a team from the FCS sometimes plays against a team from the FBS, sometimes it's a game. Sometimes it's a game going into the 3rd, 4th quarter. Sometimes the FCS team wins outright. And there was never any fear in that game of them even hanging in. You just saw really from jump that they just didn't have it. And again, if you're a team that's competing nationally for to win a conference championship, to win a national championship, there's a way you're supposed to play against a team like that, and that's how you did it. Not to say everything was perfect, but they're pretty close to perfect. As when you're considering these are 18 to 23-year-old kids who will make mistakes.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. You really couldn't complain about how the kind of game went down, and they got a lot of guys in too. And Franklin mentioned that, and how just because the starters come out doesn't mean the standard changes, and that they plan on grading the film in the 4th quarter as difficult and as with a fine eye that they did the 1st quarter. And there were some things that needed to be cleaned up. But it was a great opportunity. We'll get into it. A lot of freshmen played, and we'll have some snap counts for you there. But basically everybody and anybody kind of got into the football game at some point, which is really nice to see. They kept a lot of the starter counts really low. I think some guys only played less than 15 snaps. So definitely did. The beginning of the season, we said this game was more about staying healthy than anything else. think they stayed healthy, but also inspired maybe a smidgen more confidence. And that's kind of what you want to see in week 2.
Yeah, like you said, there are a lot of guys that have film to be graded, and that's great. It keeps everybody happy. And what's very encouraging is you didn't see a drop off at all in my mind from the first unit to the second unit to the third unit. They played a ton of guys, like Cory mentioned. They played a lot of freshmen. A lot of guys got their first taste of the college game, and I thought they did well. And everybody's going to hyper focus on one play, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it here as well. But if you're hyper focusing on one play throughout a game that you won by 56 points, I think that shows that your programs, that your team really did what they were supposed to do on Saturday. If all people are talking about is one play, and the I got something from Drew Aller too. So Drew Aller, he played well. He played within the system. He didn't really go downfield at all. But if you look at the numbers after the game, they're very, very good. Like, he just took what the defense was giving him. He didn't try to force anything. We didn't go downfield really at all. And if you think about it, going back to the West Virginia game, we went downfield, obviously, on the first touchdown pass, but it was mostly the same thing, just Drew Aller throwing out, just taking what the defense is giving them, putting the ball where it needs to be, moving the chains. And that patience, I think, could really pay off big time down the stretch here when we get to the Ohio States, the Michigans, and teams like Iowa who are going to challenge him.
Yeah, and we kind of talked a little bit, not to talk too much about Illinois right now, but we talked about how Penn State was going to be able to win these first 2 games without Drew Aller, but we thought against Illinois we were going to have to see something. I think we've already seen something, but I already kind of feel better about the Illinois game just because of what we've seen from Drew Aller so far. And it was both games. It wasn't just the West Virginia game. Like Franklin said, he's been steady Eddie. It did not seem like it was his second ever career start on Saturday. You think about Sean Clifford and how every game, no matter who the opponent was, we said that all the time about Sean Clifford. We weren't worried about him playing Ohio State versus playing Ball State because you were going to get the same Sean Clifford regardless. He's going to have his ups and he's going to have his downs regardless. Drew Aller doesn't appear, I know it's early, but doesn't appear to kind of have that same roller coaster ride to him. He didn't have any crazy awesome touchdowns like to Keandre Lambert-Smith like we saw in the West Virginia game, but we also didn't see any crazy awful mistakes either. And he just kind of did what he was supposed to do, and there wasn't really any drama attached to it.
No, not at all. And I think the plan going into this game was to let the running backs shine. James Franklin talked about it his Tuesday press conference. He kind of went out of his way to praise Kane Allen and talk highly about Kane Allen and how important he is to the program. And it was the Kane Allen show in the first half. He ended up with 19 carries for 103 yards, and he barely played in the second half. I think the starters did stay in for a little bit of the third quarter, but they just fed him early and often and felt like he was going to get 5 yards every time he touched the ball. Singleton played well too. I do think that, and it might come this week, we still haven't seen, one of those patented explosive runs from Nick Singleton. And I think it's coming. And I'm just on the edge of my seat because there are a couple times on Saturday again, and we said the same thing after West Virginia. It looked like at times Kane and Singleton were about to step away from breaking one. It just didn't happen. But they've played well, and I don't think they haven't faced a challenge so far in the season as far as holding them up or anything. And I thought Trey Potts played well too when he got in, so that was nice to see. I think we have a legitimate 3 deep at running back, and people talk about, well, who's the best duo in the country. Well, I think there's a good debate to be had, but as far as the top 3 guys, I I'd be hard pressed to find a better trio in the country.
No, I agree with that. Trey Ponce, long of 20 yards. I think he ended up with almost 70 yards rushing. So he had some really good bursts there. And again, didn't seem like a guy that was a number 3 on the depth chart by any stretch of the imagination. So you feel good there. When he first declared that he was going to transfer to Penn State, you and I were so giddy about that. When he first went to the portal, we were like, that'd be amazing, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then it happened. So, no, very excited for him. Just overall, I just thought the team was well prepared. I thought nobody was really sleepwalking. And sometimes those things are taken advantage of. When we get into more of the offense specifics, I feel like some people will just say, oh, well, it was Delaware. Well, doesn't really matter who it is. If you don't come prepared, you don't come prepared, and it's going to show up. And it didn't show up. So I thought that was good. Penn State ran 91 plays to Delaware's 41 plays, which is just insane because 41 plays is not a lot of plays. I remember was that 2021 when Penn State's defense was on the field for like 70 some or 80 some plays against Wisconsin, and then came back 2 weeks later and was like on the field for another 70 some plays against Auburn. And it was like, holy crap, they've already played a lot of football. It's not really the case at all this year so far. They've been able to get, first of all, a lot of guys in, but of those 41 snaps, I think Abdul Carter played the most snaps, and he played half of them. So 20 snaps is not a lot of football. So they're feeling pretty good there. Just overall, this team got better without having to risk very much, and that's important regardless of who you're playing.
Yeah, and we talked on the air a little, off air a little bit. The schedule sets up nice because we have Delaware, and then no matter how the games go against Illinois and Iowa, they might be close, they might not be. I don't know. What I do know is it's going to be physical because that's both of their MOs, and we're going to need fresh legs, and that's one thing we have. Look at Olufashinu. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that he's on a bit of a pitch count, and that's by design. That doesn't mean he's dealing with some injury. I think that's just something that Penn State knows. They have to keep him fresh. They have to keep him healthy. So why push him to be Superman against Delaware? I mean, they took him out, I think we mentioned it last week, earlier in the West Virginia game than the rest of the line. And to me, that does two things for you. Number one, it keeps him fresh, keeps him from getting hurt and a time that he doesn't need to be playing. And it gives Drew Shelton experience because Drew Shelton, in all likelihood, is our left tackle next year. Hunter Norzad, he ended up sitting. I think he came out at the end of the second quarter, if not the very beginning of the third quarter. So him and Olu were out early, and Franklin mentioned that Norzad's dealing with some bumps and bruises. Happy was good enough to play, and again, doesn't risk him getting more injured than he is. So I just think the combination of experience for the younger guys, and then rest for guys that need to either heal up or we don't really need to push them much. I think that only helps the program, especially going into two physical games against Illinois and Iowa.
Yeah, no, for sure. Before we get into a little bit more of the offense and defense breakdown, I was going to show the pick'em results for after week 2.
I didn't do as well this week.
I did not either. You're let me just get them up there. We can look at them here. You're still on top right now.
Oh, I'm the solo leader.
You're the solo leader, 27 points. I only got 11 points out of 15. Shout out to Seth. Seth had a perfect score of 15 points. That catapulted him all the way up to 25. But it's anyone's race right now. You see here, Sean's at 27, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 other people, 24 plus. So it's anybody's race. Obviously missing on the betting, the cover. If you just miss that, that's a 2-point swing right there. So anything can happen, but you definitely don't want to miss a week or two. I feel like you miss one, or you probably can get away with missing 1 week. But if you miss 2 weeks, you might be in a little bit of trouble. And I will say this, if you hadn't done the pick 'em yet, you don't want to miss too many of the non-conference because there's so many games to pick. Once you get in the conference play, the game picks go down. Again, it's free to play. It's just a link to a Google form. It takes 2 seconds to fill it out, and we'll update these scores. I haven't figured out the merch prizes yet, but we'll definitely figure something out for the winners. It's been really fun so far. We got over 40 people participating right now, so thank you guys so much for that. It's twice the amount of people we had last year, so very, very exciting. I didn't actually put Caroline's up there, so I'll have to definitely change that at some point. But anyway, the pick'em is live already. I should just mention that. The link is.
I did mine.
Yep. The link is. You already did yours. It's Monday afternoon, and you've already done yours.
I already did it. Yeah.
Wow.
I saw you tweeted it out, and I wasn't doing anything, so I said, may as well do it.
Nice. Yeah. No. The pick'em is live. You can see it on the YouTube description. It's also usually in a podcast description as well, and it's obviously on Twitter as well. So make sure you get your pick'ems in. Okay, Shawn, let's talk offense. We've already kind of talked a little bit of offense more than defense, but let's continue that because, well, we've already got to that point. I wanted to mention, and this is something that I think people, again, are going to say, okay, but it's Delaware. But what I wanted to mention is just how methodically impressive the Penn State offense was on Saturday. They had 6 drives that were at least 8 plays long for a touchdown. And then they had 2 more drives that were at least 10 plays or more for a touchdown. So total 8 touchdowns, very methodical. All 8 drives went into the red zone. They were 8 for 8 in the red zone with 8 red zone touchdowns. So that's going to make that statistic look really good. You always want the red zone touchdown percentage instead of just the percentage in the red zone being good. You want that touchdown number to be up very high, and they've been able to pat the stats a little bit there. They're able to run the rock 4 or 5 yards a clip, and then when they needed a big play, they were able to get it through the air. So just a methodical approach. I think sometimes Penn State's offenses in the past had to rely on that big play to maybe get them going. They showed that not only were they able to methodically move the football, but they were also methodically able to take care of the football. Sometimes you get in those 8-play drives, those 10-play drives, you have a penalty or a turnover that kind of sends it off its tracks. Penn State was able to avoid that. They even had some penalties, and they were able to still get in the end zone. So just impressed with the way they were able to just nickel and dime it, maybe a 10-yard pass here and there, but really just force it down Delaware's throat. So that was, to me, we haven't even really seen that Penn State even against bad opponents before.
No, and like you said, in the Clifford era, I mean, we would talk a lot, and I used to talk a lot about before I was on here. The offense would often fall into a lull where they just didn't do anything for a whole quarter, sometimes a whole half, and it really didn't matter who you were playing against. They just would stop. And on Saturday, it was just a well-oiled machine. And it felt like we could get whatever we wanted. And in a way, one of the reasons that I think we should have maybe given the kickers a shot, not only would I have been dead on with the score if they gave them one shot, we could do whatever we wanted. Like, I knew when we went for it on the 4th down, I was like, yeah, we're gonna get these, because they just didn't have any answers for any of our athletes. And in a way, it's hard to get a ton out of that when you just totally outmatch a team. But it's just, we've seen before that it didn't really matter that we had superior athletes. We would still have trouble executing. So although there's not, you're not going to look back at the Delaware game of 2023 and be like, oh yeah, that's when I knew this team was special. But you're going to say, well, we didn't faceplant. We didn't just look at Ohio State. They only won 35-7 against Youngstown State. And Youngstown State is an FCS opponent as well. And I'd much rather win 63-7 than 35-7. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I think the comparison to Villanova in 2021 is an important one, right? Couldn't run the ball at all against Villanova. It was pretty evident that that team had a lot to work on still. There weren't any red flags coming out of the Delaware game, at
None.
least offensively.
None that we didn't already know.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Right. And I think that's important, right? And that kind of leads me to Katron Allen because they were able to run the ball really well. Katron Allen technically got the start in this game over Nick Singleton. And to be honest with you, I think he deserved it because I thought he played really well against West Virginia. Obviously, those two are going to go back and forth. I kind of felt bad for Katron Allen sometimes because he got him all the way down to like the 5-yard line, and then Nick Singleton ran it in. Like, I mean, Allen still ended up with the rushing touchdown, but he had one called back for the Trey Wallace blocking the back, and just a couple other times I feel like he got them pretty close, and then Nick Singleton ran it in for a touchdown. Even the one where he had that nasty step back juke, that drive, he got them close, and then Nick Singleton scored. Singleton ended up with 3, Allen ended up with 1. Drew Aller ended up with a rushing touchdown as well. But Katron Allen looked phenomenal. I thought his vision and his patience is still just better than anyone else. But he also showed some quickness in the hole that I think is important to see too. Just all in all, very impressed there. And I don't know exactly what's going on, Sean, as far as like if Penn State doesn't feel like Katron Allen's getting the love he deserves, but we very much like Katron Allen. We very much think he's phenomenal. I guess maybe because he just wasn't the home run hitter, maybe because Nick Singleton had such a big game against Auburn and I guess Utah. But the fans feel like if you ask the casual fan, I feel like they probably know Nick Singleton more than Katron Allen. And that's probably not right because I think Katron Allen, at least through 2 games, has looked very impressive.
Well, I mean, chick stick the long ball, right? Like casual fans tend to remember the 80-yard run, and that's great, and we need that, right? Before these two guys got here, between Journey Brown and them, we didn't have a home run hitter. Noah Kane, Kevon Lee, they would do good things, but we didn't have a home run hitter among them. And now we have Singleton, who's as explosive as anyone. But games you can't just depend on the home run ball all the time. That's not how you kill clock. And in the Big Ten, that's not really how you win games. Like, you win games by keeping drives alive. And it's 3rd and 2, you need 2 yards. And I'm taking Katron Allen almost any day of the week. Probably any day of the week over Nick Singleton to pick up those 2 yards. And it's nothing disrespectful toward Nick or anything, but Katron's just better at that. And I think the thing that I really like about Katron is since he got here, he had you knew what you were getting from him every single week. You're getting a guy who is going to run hard. He's added some quickness to his game. He made a really nice move inside the 10-yard line that was just very, very smooth. And I think he's starting to add more of those moves to his game. And I think sometimes people, well, I don't think so anymore, but maybe when he was coming in, people tried to say that he was kind of just like early, like gonna run you over back, but he does have some wiggle to him. Another thing I do want to mention is this team hasn't had any turnovers yet. And through 2 games, and I know the defenses we were playing, I mean, we're not playing against the 85 Bears here, I get it, but just it speaks to them not being careless with the football. And that's very, very important. Like Franklin always talks about winning the explosive play battles, winning turnover battles, and you got to do both. So, and if you do both of those things, you're going to win a lot of games. So I hope that's a trend that could continue.
Yeah, and Connor on YouTube says Drew hitting his checkdowns was a thing of beauty. That kind of goes into it, right? Taking care of the football,
100%.
not forcing it and then just knowing that your opportunity is going to show up and you're going to have your moment, but it's about striking when it's time and not forcing it beforehand. And I think we had a little bit of this conversation we were texting today, Sean, but moving forward, it's going to be very interesting to see what defenses do as far as defending Penn State, because if you leave two safeties back and you play coverage like we think Illinois and Iowa will, as far as not trying to give up the explosive play, then you kind of let Katron Allen and Nick Singleton wear you out for 4 yards a clip. And then you let Drew Aller just kind of play hooks and curls with Trey Wallace all day, and then run some screens in there every once in a while. And they have shown now through at least 2 games, again, not great competition, but the ability to be consistent with that. And there was times when previous quarterbacks at Penn State where Penn State couldn't consistently throw the bubble screen, couldn't consistently throw the hitch, couldn't consistently throw the dig route, couldn't consistently throw the slant. And you could kind of, if you were an Iowa team, you could kind of just keep giving up ground, knowing that they're not going to consistently be able to move the ball, say 80 yards to score a touchdown. Well, Penn State just showed that they're able to do that. And part of that is exactly what Connor's saying, right? Being able to hit the check down and then let his athlete make a guy miss and pick up a couple extra yards here and there. That's kind of the difference. And I'm very curious what Iowa and Illinois are going to do. Are they going to try to bring pressure? Excuse me. Are they going to try to bring pressure? Are they going to try to find a way to get Drew Aller uncomfortable, although we haven't seen that yet? Or are they going to try to see if they can make Drew Aller impatient by making him consistently check the ball down? That's going to be pretty interesting to see in these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think if I were a defensive coordinator getting ready to play Penn State, I think, keeping 2 safeties high, I think that's the best way to approach it, because it's all well and good. And we've all said, and we've all given Drew a lot of credit for not forcing the issue, but it's a different deal when you're playing against an Iowa or even an Illinois, who I think is going to have a better defense than the previous 2 teams we played. And it's easier to get frustrated when, let's say, the run game isn't there for you. It's easier to, then you could start falling into saying, well, the run game isn't really going. I got to start making plays. And that's when they lull you into a mistake. And Drew hasn't played on the road yet. So he hasn't started a game on the road yet. So it's going to be a different environment. So I'm not ready to say like Drew is, Drew's an expert at taking care of the ball or anything, but I got to just judge him based on what he's done so far. And so far he's done a good job. And I just hope it continues, and he continues to keep that patience and knowing that, well, big play is going to come. Big play is going to come.
Yeah, I just pulled it up because I know his numbers are pretty good when it comes to this. Let me see if I can find exactly what rank he is here. So nationally right now, Drew Aller has a 78% completion percentage, which is 6th best in the country. People above him, J.J. McCarthy, who's at 87%. Credit where credit's due. Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams are among some of the other quarterbacks with, in the top 6. Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders and Bo Nix are right below him. And Sam Hartman's in that company too. So he's in a pretty elite company as far as completion percentage. And I want to say it was Audrey Snyder had an article on it. But, Penn State's season completion percentage record is like 60-something%, I think. So if he stays anywhere near the high 70s, you're talking about a record-breaking season. So just from an accuracy standpoint, Sean, I am impressed. And the thing is, I don't think accuracy numbers lie a lot of the times. I think, again, the people are going to think I'm just a salty Penn State fan. I think J.J. McCarthy's numbers, when you're in the 87% like that lies a little bit. But Sean Clifford was never throwing 78% completion percentage through 2 games. Like, there's a certain level of accuracy that you have to have in order to consistently do that. So I know it's only 2 games, but I don't really expect that completion percentage to drop very much. And that completion percentage isn't going to drop, then more times or not, you're going to be able to stay on schedule. So that's a very good sign if you're a Penn State fan.
Oh, no question. The names that you named, they're all guys that are going to be playing in the NFL. And accuracy tends to, like you said, it tends to translate well to the next level, because if you're completing like 50% of your passes against college players, that is a bad sign for your NFL prospects. If you should be completing at least 65 at the end of the day, when you're going through your conference. At the end of the day, you should be completing between 60 to 70% of your passes if you're truly first or second round NFL prospect. So I'm not saying it's not a good sign or anything. Of course it is, but we just need some perspective. Like we said, West Virginia had one of the worst secondaries in the country last season, and Delaware is still an FCS program. But Drew's patience, it's still been mighty impressive, and that he's willing to take those checkdowns. I mean, I think it does speak a lot to his maturity.
Yeah, let's go to tight ends, because tight ends was something coming out of week 1. People were like, what about the tight ends? We do have a fan question about this too, but I think it's worth talking about now. They got the tight ends involved more in week 2 than they did week 1. And I don't think it was necessarily even on purpose. I think just they're going to go with the game plan, and if the defense allows it, then they will throw it to the tight ends more. Tight ends very heavily involved in the running game still. We broke some of that film down last week. But Ty Warren had 6 targets, which was tied for the most by anybody on the team. And Theo Johnson had 2. So 8 targets this week. I think they only had 3 last week as far as targets. So you pretty much doubled the amount of targets they had. And of course, Ty Warren also had a touchdown catch to go along with it. So the tight ends got a little bit more involved, Sean. Khalil Dinkins, I think, continued to block well. Khalil Dinkins played. Jerry Cross played. Andrew Rappelier played. So they got some more tight ends as far as depth in there, too. But I think this is what to expect from the tight ends. I think they're not that like they're disappearing or anything, but I think some games they're going to be like, oh, now they're using the tight ends. But in reality, it's just, yeah, they're open, so we threw it to them. But before, we were just throwing it to whoever else was open. So I wasn't ready to pull the alarm last week, and I'm not going to sit here and think that they went out of their way to get the tight ends of football. I think it just happened naturally.
Yeah, and it's not like we threw them every time. They had 8 catches between the 2 of them, which ain't nothing. But it's not like we were going to them every single time Drew dropped back. Tyler Warren was tied for the lead in completion and receptions. He had 6 receptions for a touchdown. Theo got involved too. But in West Virginia, they did a lot of things that I liked when it came to blocking. I see a lot of growth from both of these players when it comes to blocking as tight ends. And I'm not saying it was one of my major concerns going into the season, because it wasn't, but it was something I wanted to see, how the tight ends blocked without Brent Strange being there. And I think they've done a great job so far. And that has to be a fantastic sign. And Khalil Dinkins, like you said, when he comes in the T formation, again, very nice job. And yeah, right now, I think you could tell that the tight ends are coached by a former offensive lineman in Ty Howell. And because they just have that blocking down so well. And it's been really since he's taken over. So I think that's a credit to Ty Howell and his players for making that jump in run blocking.
Franklin had a comment, I think it was during the press conference last week, that really kind of resonated with me, because he was talking about how their tight ends are true tight ends. They're all well-rounded tight ends. that they're not just pass catchers that you see across the country. These guys are asked to block. And obviously there's examples of that in the sport. But as far as being able to be game changers in the passing game, as far as catching the ball and being able to block in the running game and be effective in both, I think that is impressive, right? You have like the Iowas and the Minnesotas of the world that, yeah, they can block and, yeah, technically they can catch the football, but these guys are matchup nightmares when they're asked to run routes. And now we're seeing them dominate in the run game. I have one clip I'm going to show a little bit later that I was really impressed with by pretty much everyone blocking, but especially the tight ends. And it makes Mike Yurcich's life so easy when he can throw a tight end out there, because then we talked about this a little bit last week too. You come out in a 12 personnel, a lot of people think you're going to run the football. When Penn State comes out in 12 personnel, I still have no idea whether or not they're going to pass or run. Zero idea, right? I mean, it's literally, and the stats probably aren't exactly this, but they're pretty much 50-50 in my mind. You come out with 12 personnel if you're Penn State, I have no idea what you're going to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. It keeps defenses off balance because in some offenses, yeah, they're primarily blockers, or you'll have one tight end that's primarily a blocker, the other one's primarily a receiver. Well, when one of them comes in, one of them comes out, you know exactly what they're going to be doing. So, and the other thing is, it really helps them develop for the next level, because there are tight ends that get to the NFL, and as soon as they come in the game, you know what the offense is going to do. And that's not the case here. And I think when we get into the meat of the schedule and we're coming up on the first part of the meat of the schedule, yeah, that definitely helps getting them matched up with tight ends, or especially a guy like Theo. If he's going one-on-one with the safety, he could out jump them. So it's going to develop more in the passing game. It will. But Penn State is going to do what they've done since James Franklin has taken over at Penn State, and that's take what the defense has given him. And to me, that's the right approach. And I thought the receivers were impressive too. And I know we're going to be getting to the receivers, but yeah, I can't say enough good things about how the tight ends have played so far. And I am not at all panicked about their quote unquote lack of production.
Now let's go to the offensive line next. Didn't give up a sack on Saturday, which I don't think enough people are talking about. For like the longest time there, Penn State still was giving up a sack to at least somebody. And now, because it's just expected that they're good, we don't talk about it enough. If you don't allow a sack, especially when your backup quarterback plays as much as Bo Prabila did, if you don't allow a sack, that's awesome. That needs to be praised and talked about a bunch. I don't care who the opponent is. Just you ran 91 plays and you didn't allow a sack. So now I know more than half of those are runs, but that's not the point. That's the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention was JB Nelson didn't play. He was sick, been going through an illness. So we saw Vega Ione get the start at left guard. So since Landon Tangwall's been out and injured and now retired, we weren't sure who then was going to be that next left or next guard that would step up if something would happen to JB Nelson. Now we kind of have that answer. Vega Ione got the start. I'll show a clip a little bit later here. He looked pretty good as far as when he got in the game. He looked like he did some good things. He's a big guy, huge. And so he's not maybe as mobile as JB Nelson, but still he looked very impressive, and he can, once he gets you, you're not going anywhere. So that was nice to see. Only other thing I was going to mention on the offensive line before I turn it over to you, Caden Wallace played well. If we're going to really harp on things today, he did have one pretty bad Olay block where he got spun around. I think the guy went inside actually. And at some point, I think Caden Wallace was like trying to block him with his back. So I don't know exactly what happened there, but for the most part, he's doing well. Now, is he going to probably have a moment like that in each game? Probably. But that even that moment did not cause there to be a sack. So credit, everybody else were doing their job. But something to pay attention to. I'm not going to say Caden Wallace is a liability or anything like that, but if we're going to really harp on things, obviously wouldn't like to see him get spun around like that.
It's funny. When I was at the game, I did some live tweeting during this game. I happened to have a good spot at the Beeb to be able to tweet out most of the time. And Caden Wall and somebody tweeted at us, how do you think Caden Wallace, something along the lines of, how do you think Caden Wallace is playing? It seems like he could be better, whatever. He wasn't ripping on him or anything, but I was like, God, I didn't even notice anything with Caden Wallace. And, sometimes when you're watching live, sometimes you can miss things. It's very easy to do. And then I went back and I watched at home and I was like, I don't know what people are talking about. And then I saw the log. I was like, okay. But outside of that, like, I thought he was fine. I didn't see anything else. He had a bad moment. But again, they're going to make mistakes sometimes, even against a team like Delaware. They're going to get beat. And it happens. So I'm not too overly concerned with how Caden Wallace played. I just think he had a bad moment. And yeah, it was cool to see Vega get his first start. He's a guy that we've heard a ton about since he's got onto campus. First off, his size, and he already looked the part last season, and now he still looks the part. And I think he has a very, very bright future. He might be a starter as soon as next season at Penn State. We mentioned that Hunter Norzad, he did play. He didn't play as much as the rest of the starters outside of Olu played, but he did play, and he was good. And then Nick Dawkins came in. And that's the first time Nick Dawkins got a lot of time on the field, and I think it's very valuable. Nick Dawkins, in all likelihood, is our starting center next season. And I was happy with the way he played, and it was cool to see him get as much time as he did. And I think that's going to be something that he could build off of. Olu Fashanu, he got called for a hold that I don't think he should have been called for a hold. There was a hold on the play, but Tyler Warren was the one that held. And they called 74, and I was like, oh, that's I hope they go back and like change that before he gets drafted, so they're not like, oh, you had a hold against Delaware. It was not him. And then I watched on NBC on Peacock, and I was like, yep, I was right when I saw it live. I saw the hold as soon as it happened. I was like, oh, they're gonna throw the flag. Oh, there's the flag. And yeah, it wasn't on him. So yeah, I thought the line played very well. And like Cory said, anytime you don't give up a sack, it doesn't matter who it's against. I think you have to be happy. And it was another game where it seemed like we could pick up wherever we wanted on the ground. And we all know what it's like not to have that luxury, even against lesser competition. And anytime Katron or Singleton or Potts got the ball, or heck, Tank Smith got the ball, it felt like they could get whatever they wanted.
Yeah, big credit to the offensive line to being able to do that effectively. Even when they begin to shuffle people around, they're still able to be effective, which I think is pretty impressive. Just again, don't want to beat on the drum too hard here, but just go back to when teams, much less talented teams, were able to just pretty much have 3 or 5 guys in the box, and then we're able to stop the run, and then they were able to play the pass against Penn State. Come quite a long way in just a couple of years. Sean, wide receivers. The only thing I really want to mention before I turn it over to you and let you go is my boy Omari Evans got a touchdown catch. We don't know the situation with Omari Evans. We thought, he had a big role in the blue and white game. I thought he was going to be the next best thing. And next, he's like third string wide receiver. So don't know if that's related to a discipline thing. If he's in a doghouse, just don't know. But it was nice to see him get out on the field and contribute. Scored a touchdown via Bo Perbula late in the game. But you could see, right, even on that one play, he ran away from the safety and made it look really, really easy. So shout out to Omari Evans. Sean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Cory talked before about the standard, right? And James Franklin talks about having a standard for every player. It doesn't matter what time of the game it is. It doesn't matter what the score is. There's a standard for how you have to play. Nick Saban talks a lot about this as well. And I thought the one play that really exemplified that was Christian Driver. He gets in. It's the first time we've seen him. And he just battling for the first down. He stopped a little short and he just keeps going, keeps turning his legs, keep turning his legs. And this is a guy who, little down on the depth chart right now. I still think he has a bright future, but just continuing to play hard to the end. And all these receivers did. And you mentioned Omari Evans. I don't know what's going on with him. If I had if we had press credentials, I would probably ask Franklin about Omari Evans and what the situation is, just because he was so involved in the spring game. And he hasn't been asked about Omari Evans. So, I mean, I think it would be an interesting thing to ask about. But he got in, scored a touchdown. KLS played well. He got banged up. It looked like a cramp to me live, because he came back in a few plays, and then he came limping off the field again. And then he came back in. So I think from what it looked like he was cramping. Dante Cephas, it seems like every time he catches the ball, it's always for a first down. Usually could make a play. I think you're going to see more and more of him as the season goes on. It's tough coming in the summer and contributing right away. And that's what we're asking him to do. And I think he's going to get more and more involved as the season goes on. But, I mean, Marquise Hagan's, his group, impresses for a second straight week. Again, of course, it's Delaware. I get it. But you don't see drops, which is good. You don't see a lot of miscommunication between Drew and the receivers, which is good. And that could happen against anybody. So it's the mental things that have impressed me. That impressed me on Saturday with the receiver group.
Yeah, Keandre Lambert-Smith still averaged 12.3 yards per catch. Dante Cephas, 2 catches for 36 yards. Dante Cephas, that one play was the fake bubble go route, and Drew didn't throw it to the bubble, didn't throw it to the go route, scrambled away from all of that, and Dante Cephas was able to just run with them and kind of just ran a crossing route, and nobody picked him up. That was, to me, kind of a veteran play there, to give Aller another option. I really like that from Cephas. That's the kind of thing you wanted from Cephas, right? A veteran experience to provide something like that. Now, am I digging too far into, reading tea leaves there as far as would have another receiver done that? Potentially. But that's the stuff that will give Cephas some more reps moving forward that maybe you can't teach as well. Just the ability to get open and to make a play. So, yeah, I love seeing that. Nick Singleton caught a pass out of the backfield for 18 yards. I'm curious to see moving forward how much they try to involve the running backs in the receiving game. We haven't seen a bunch of it yet, but I think it's something that could be could happen more a little bit later on. Malik McClain, after having such a big game against West Virginia, only had 1 catch for 7 yards, but I'm not too worried there either.
No, I've liked everything I've saw from Malik McClain so far. And they're going to be, because we play so many receivers and we have the tight ends and we have the running backs, you're going to have weeks where a guy catches only 1 or 2 balls. And I don't think that's a big deal because we have so many guys. I mean, and I'll take that back. I think KLS might be the true one on this team. I mean, I think we've been looking for a true number one. I think it's him. I mean, he has the explosiveness. He's, for the past, going back to late last season when Parker went out, we've always been looking for consistency with him. I think we're seeing it. I think this is for real. I think he's the true alpha in that room right now. And that's something I don't think we knew for sure if we'd have from him. But I think just his approach, and I always knew he had the talent to do it. And I feel good with having him as the one. I think he's an NFL player.
No, I agree. I think he has solidified himself as the number 1 receiver on this football team. And I think Drew Aller goes to him when he needs something too, which is exactly what you want.
No doubt. Yep.
That's kind of the definition
Chips
of it.
are down. He's going to him. Yep.
I'm going to show one play during the film breakdown today. I only have 3 to show today, but you'll see it in this play. But there was another touchdown. I don't remember which one it was by Nick Singleton, But Malik McLean has a fantastic block on one of those rushing touchdowns that I wanted to mention. But all of these wide receivers are done a really good job blocking downfield. Liam Clifford, specifically, whether it's yards after the catch or an actual true run play, he's done really well in blocking for his teammates as well. So big part of the run game is wide receiver blocking. There was a touchdown in the Steelers 49ers game on Sunday. And the reason it was a touchdown instead of just an 80-yard run was because of the wide receivers. And forget who the announcer was. Maybe it was Greg Olson who said it. But basically, the difference between a big gain and a touchdown is downfield blocking by your receivers. Just think of like the Saquon Barkley run in the Rose Bowl, what Chris Godwin did. I think we have wide receivers that are willing to go the extra mile. So their motor is not stopping, and they're trying to block downfield, and that's how you spring those explosive plays. And so far in film, I've seen a lot of the receivers blocking downfield really well, which is a very good sign.
Yeah, a hallmark of James Franklin's team so far has been that unselfishness from the receivers. That goes way back to when he first got here. The receivers were always willing blockers, and they still are. And yeah, that's the difference. Again, like you said, 20-yard gain and a touchdown. And that adds up. That all adds up. And it speaks to this team's just that there's I think there's a recognition among the guys that they could be really special and that they could win a lot of stuff and that they could compete and that they can compete on the national level. And I think they recognize what it takes. I mean, they had a taste of that last year winning the Rose Bowl, but I think there's a hunger to do more. They know the teams they have to beat, and they know what they have to do. And part of that is helping another guy shine, helping another guy get his moment in the end zone, and being part of it. And that's more than encouraging to see.
No, couldn't agree more. Mike Yurcich's playing calling I thought was excellent. Yep. The flea flicker was just something else that to put on tape there. It wasn't a flea flicker for a go route, though. It was a flea flicker for like a 15-yard out route, which I thought was different. And you don't probably have that route combination and if you don't have Drew Aller, because that was not an easy throw that he made look really easy over there to Keandre Lambert-Smith. Usually that's like a chuck it deep, and if it's not there, then just chuck it out of the back of the end zone. And yet they kind of just ran like a combo route out of a flea flicker, which is just crazy, but really cool. So no real reason for it, but I think it's good to make people have to think about a lot of different things. And that's definitely the case with Beau Pribula, who ran all over the place, Sean, and was an effective runner, but was very much a runner first before a thrower. And I have no issue with that, but it does make you wonder where his passing skills are at, because if you're looking in the future past Drew Aller, I think Beau Pribula, by the way, is a fantastic running quarterback, but I'm curious where his passing skills are at, and we haven't seen those yet. Very clear he's a good runner. In fact, I said this, I tweeted this, I don't think he reminds me very much of Trace McSorley. I think he's a better runner than Trace McSorley. I think he's quicker. Yes, they're both scrappy runners, but I don't even know if they necessarily have even the same kind of body shape. And so I was very impressed with the way Beau Pribula was running the football. I don't know how much I take out of that, because it was against Delaware in mop-up duty. But yes, he was able to run all over the place, which he's not scared to do so. But I was more impressed with his throw to Amari Evans in the end zone than any of the runs he had. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be fine as a runner. That's what he does. And I never had any worries about Beau as a runner. I knew out of high school, this guy can move. This guy's an athlete. It's always been being a passer. And at the end of the day, being a quarterback is about throwing the football. And you could be a great runner. I've seen a lot of great running quarterbacks, but even at the college level, you got to be able to throw the ball. And I'm not saying Bo can't, but I haven't seen enough to feel comfortable with him as a potential starting quarterback for us someday. I just haven't. And I know he could run. I know if God forbid Drew has to miss a few plays, I know he could run the offense. I know he could get a snap off, which we know can't always take for granted. And overall, I think it was productive to have Bo in there with the starters. So there was a time where he was the only backup on the field, outside of maybe Olu. Like, and that's very important because I think one of the things Franklin took a lot of heat for was when it was revealed that Taquan Roberson never took any snaps with the first team. And really, I don't know how you have that, how you do that, like in practice. And I get it. You only have such a certain amount of time to practice. That's true. But it was just kind of mind-boggling to me that he never took any snaps with the first team when his number one job for that season was to be ready in the event Sean Clifford got hurt. And I think to have Bo get experience with the ones in a live game situation, I think could potentially pay off down the road.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, at the very, very worst, Bo comes in against somebody and they can run the rock. And against probably most teams, that's going to be enough.
Yeah, that read option with him and Singleton or him and Katron, that could be lethal.
Right. So, yeah, no, or more importantly, he's able to work the cadence and not have 17 false starts. So
that's also important.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I think it was good. We're ready to see more of him, hopefully down the road here in future. Again, love what they did as far as getting him a lot of playing time. I know Drew Aller did have some play in the third quarter, so my bold prediction was wrong. But Bo Prabila still played a bunch. And I said the entire second half, he actually had like a cut on his arm or something. So Jackson Smollett came in for 2 plays. So that wouldn't have been right anyway, because Smollett came in for those 2 plays. But I was not expecting a cut on the arm to unravel my bold prediction.
That was already unraveled because Drew already played in the...
Besides that, though,
I think Steve Jones said the reason they wanted, well, he said it like he said it after the game, like the reason that you play Drew the first drive of the second half is to get him ready for coming out of halftime.
Yeah.
Which that's the totally logic. That's the logic behind it.
I have always said, and I will take the argument for either one, but I always say, like, if you go down and score a touchdown, then you're done for the day. You know what I mean? If you go down, you score, we're good. You're done. And I do think there's importance to that. I will always die on the hill that your starter should always play the first half no matter what. I will always die on that hill. Doesn't matter what. You've got to get offensively to keep your rhythm. I think you've got to at least play a half of football. So the people that are like, not so much in that game, but even like if you remember the Idaho game was already a blowout, like doesn't matter. First half is the first half. We can go from there. But anyway, getting back on track here a little bit. Just want to say thank you guys so much for watching the show. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are listening on the podcast, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening to the show. Thank you guys so much. Let's talk defense, Sean. Going to show the film, obviously. They're just really good. I don't think people quite understand how good they're playing right now, especially from a passing perspective. I mentioned this already on Twitter, but Audrey Snyder had the good point that Penn State had more rushing attempts than Delaware had passing yards, which is kind of a crazy statistic that they were able to run that much, but also that Delaware only had 58 yards passing. Because you think at least if you're down 63-7, they're going to at least throw for 100 yards just because they're going to be trying to throw a bunch to get back in the football game. That was not the case for a couple of different reasons. Delaware only ended up with 17 passing attempts, but they still averaged 3.4 yards on those completions, which is just not very good. So, and the one pick six, which we'll get to, I'm sure, in a second. But just overall, this defense played phenomenal. I mean, just it is not easy thing to do to do what they do, and they made it look really, really simple. I mean, back-to-back 3-and-outs to start the day pretty much put Delaware in a hole that they would never get out of. And just very impressed. Overall, very happy that they were able to get 2 turnovers. Very happy that they were able to get more pressure on the quarterback, come away with a couple sacks. Those are 2 things we kind of wanted to see more coming out of West Virginia, and we saw those. So overall, very happy. Again, same thing with the offense. Got a lot of depth, got a lot of young guys' experience. Generally, just impressed with this unit. They're very good, very athletic.
Yeah, one of the reasons for the low snap count was because they were off the field so quick. And they played also into the second half. Abdul Carter, like Cory said, played he had the most snaps. And it's just because we were off the field on 3-and-outs, and it looked impossible at times for Delaware to get anything going. I think they tried the quick passing game, but every time their quarterback dropped back to pass, he was under fire immediately, and even if he wasn't, their receivers were pretty much smothered. And again, that's what you want when you're playing the Delaware fighting Blue Hens. You want to totally impose your will on them on both sides of the ball, and largely this defense did it the whole game. And again, like the offense, didn't matter if it was the first string, the second string, the third string, that standard remained the same. And we were able to play a lot of freshmen who frankly didn't look like freshmen when they were playing out there.
Yeah, and I want to give you a shout out. Penn State ends up with 7 TFLs. Did you have the over/under at 7.5 or 6.5?
6.5.
Yeah, so you were right on the money there.
Neighborhood. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
You're perfect. So I thought you were a little low, but you ended up being pretty much right on the money. So shout out to you for that.
Thanks, man.
And then, yeah, I mean, you mentioned their receivers. Jordan Townsend, we thought was a pretty decent receiver for Delaware. He ends up 2 catches for 15 yards. So just didn't do anything offensively against Penn State. I'm going to show and break down the one play that Delaware scored on for their 66-yard touchdown run. But besides that, if you include the sack yardage, they're at 16 yards of rushing. Besides that long of 66 yards, which is just, again, even with that run, if you include the sack yards, they're still at 3.4 yards per carry. If you take that out, I mean, you can do the math at home, people. It's not very good.
Yeah, not good. Yeah, and the run defense I thought was fine. We're going to break down the play. But outside of that, the run defense was fine. And you still saw some people going, "Oh, we got to fix the run defense." And well, we have to try not to have as many 66-yard runs on us. Yeah, but outside of that, it's not like they were getting 6 yards a carry, 6 yards a clip or anything like that. They were pretty suffocated throughout the game. And again, that's what it's supposed to be. So the defense for sure answered the bell on Saturday.
Yeah, I thought their tackling was a little bit better too. I thought they flew around just a little bit more.
Me too.
And so that's also a very good sign to see. I'll talk. We're going to talk freshmen in a second, but just overall as a smothering performance. Thought the safeties and defensive backs blitz better. I wanted to mention that too. And I thought we pass rushed just in general a lot better. Just felt like we were. Well, they stood back to throw it a little bit more than West Virginia did too, but it just seemed like they were getting there and getting home, which is nice. The only special teams things that I really wanted to mention, Alex Felkins got the start at kicker. He also had a kick off later on, which is a really good kick. So it seems like he might be able to do that too if for every reason Gabe Newusu wouldn't be able to. Xander Zahadak did have an extra point randomly because Penn State scored again, but then he wasn't out there, so I don't exactly understand that. Maybe that was just straight up like, hey, let's just get you one. Let's just get you one. But to me, that was a little interesting. Riley Thompson was fine. Caden Saunders again had a nice catch where he kind of had to go through some traffic in order to snag the football. Franklin mentioned that in the press conference. He was happy that Caden Saunders came up during the West Virginia game and caught a football in traffic. And Saunders kind of had to dodge another person in order to catch the football on Saturday. So that seems good there. Only had 2 kick returns, so not much to discuss there. But overall, Sean, I think it was a step in the right directions of special teams. The only other thing I can think of was the false start. Was it Devon Ellies who started or not false start, but went off sides on the 4th and 1?
Yeah, it was Ellies, yeah.
So you can't do that on the 4th and 1s. I will say this, if I'm going to defend Devon Ellies for a second. It was 4th and whatever, and they called the timeout beforehand. So you're even thinking more like it might be a trick play. And so you might be anticipating a quick jump, but yeah, you can't give them a free first down on something like that. That's got to be cleaned up. What do you have, Sean, on special teams?
Yeah. I mean, I think just cleaning up mistakes in general. Devon Ellies, I mean, you can't jump off sides there. Yeah. I mean, you could against Delaware get away with it, but I mean, against a better team, yeah, that could cause, like, you can't give the ball back to Michigan. You can't give the ball back to Ohio State. Those offenses are potentially too lethal. The kickoff where Singleton nearly went out of bounds. I don't really know how the trajectory of the ball was going. And it's a tough call, right? Because if the ball lands inbounds, it could just roll in the end zone, which I think would most likely happen. It's a touchback. It could land out of bounds. It could take a bad bounce, go back inbounds, and then you're chasing the ball like a chicken with your head cut off. So at first I was like, God, just let that ball go. Then the more I think about it, I'm like, it's probably more risky. And at the end of the day, he still fair catches the ball in bounds. The right call is eventually made that it should have been a fair catch start at the 25-yard line. It wasn't a kickoff out of bounds. That wasn't the right call either when they tried to throw the penalty, flag. But I don't know. I at the end, maybe he probably did make the right call. But at first glance, I was like, don't you let that ball go?
Based off of my view, I think it was the right decision to catch it. How many times have we seen exactly what you mentioned where that ball like pops right back up and you're just like, well, now you're in trouble. So I think it was the right decision to catch it. You know, if he just catches it with his 1 foot out of bounds, then it is a penalty. If he doesn't drag that foot, which we're not aware of the rules there, but if he catches it out of bounds, it is technically out of bounds. It's not like they get the ball where it went out of bounds or anything crazy like that. But so it almost looked like he drug his foot on purpose. Maybe he didn't, but it would have actually been beneficial if he didn't drag his foot. But I think it was the right call because I don't think it was far enough where you can trust that bounce. And again, situation like that, you minimize a chance for any momentum swings, right? You just catch the ball, you turn a potential event into a non-event, and you just move on with your day. Mm-hmm. Don't let it be something that it could or could not be. Just eliminate the possibility of it.
Right. So, but yeah, I just want to see them clean up the mistakes. They didn't get a chance for a field goal. So, you know, from Penn State's perspective, why worry about field goal kicking when you could just score touchdowns, which is something I respect. Also, with the offense, I wanted to mention this too. Red zone execution was much better. I mean, we scored a touchdown every time we were in the red zone. I think Katron Allen, when he put the ball on the ground, I don't think we were quite in the red zone yet. Now we ended up recovering it, so it wasn't a big deal. But you know, that was really the only mishap. But wanted to mention that the red zone execution, something I talked a little bit about last week, it was much, much better this week.
Yeah, no, it was. And I think that helped because of the run game, but also Ty Warren catching that touchdown pass. That doesn't hurt things either. Okay, do we want to go to some film? Oh, let's talk freshmen first.
Let's.
Lots of freshmen played. A bunch of them don't have probably the entire list. Javen Williams, Anthony Dunca, Chimney Ono, Andrew Rapplier, King Mack, Elliott Washington, Jameel Lyons, Tony Rojas. Notably, no Alex Berkmeyer. Zion Tracy. Did I forget anybody? Oh, Kavion Keys and Tamir Robinson.
Yeah. Anthony Donka.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought Anthony Dunca, just random thought. I thought he actually played really well.
I thought so too.
King Mack played 17 snaps, which was a lot of snaps compared to everyone else that day. So that was cool to see. Oh, you know what? I think Dakari Nelson played too.
Oh, did he get in? I didn't even notice.
Yeah, I'm 99% sure that he got in. Because at one point Gramps was like, "Who's that number?" And I was like, And it took me a second, and I was like, I think that's the Dakari Nelson. Tyrese Mills got in too, by the way. Not a freshman, but just a random.
Davian Collins did as well, and he's a Mississippi State transfer.
That's right. Yep. Maybe did Dakari Nelson not play? Okay, maybe Dakari Nelson didn't play.
Yeah, I didn't notice him.
Did he play last week?
I don't think so.
He must have played
not many freshmen got in.
I think he did play this week because, and I don't think he played very much, but I think he got in because we do have, based off Audrey Snyder's redshirt report, Dakari Nelson has played in one game. So
go with Audrey.
Yeah. But I don't think it was notable how much he played, but I think he did play. So yeah, and I think Lamont Payne technically played too, according to this. So, as well as Ty Blanding, the defensive tackle.
Yep. So
lots of freshmen.
Yep. Carmelo Taylor did not. But yeah, Mekhi Flowers not a true freshman, but a redshirt freshman. He got his first time as well, so that was nice to see. King Mack looks like he belongs. I mean, I think he's the first guy that jumped off to me. I mean, it reminded me a little bit about how we would see KJ Winston when he got in last season, and he just sometimes they get in there and it just looks like they have it. And he's not going to play a ton this year. He will get in because he's an athlete, especially on special teams. I do expect him to burn his red shirt. But I mean, that guy's going to be a baller. I have no doubt about it. Another guy that jumped out to me was Jameel Lyons. I mean, he crushed the back. I think it was the backup quarterback by that point. I mean, he punished him. It was a hard hit. It was a clean hit. I mean, I was already feeling.
Sean.
Yeah.
Say that again. Start from the top.
Okay, yeah, Jameel Lyons. I mean, he jumped right off the screen at me. I mean, he punished the backup quarterback. He sent them into next Tuesday. And, I mean, I'm already excited about him. To see it in live action, just to see that pop right away. Your first game experience. I don't care who it's against. It's your first time in a college. It's the first time in a college atmosphere. I mean, that guy belongs. That guy's gonna be a player, and he probably redshirts this season. But by the end of his career, I think that guy could be a star.
I'm not so sure he ends up redshirting, Sean. To be honest,
maybe not. He's not a green light right now, but he's probably almost a green light.
I think he is a green light at this point because he played one snap against West Virginia, so he already has two games in his book. We still have UMass. we still have, the Illinois, or we have the
Northwestern.
Northwestern, and we still have a Rutgers, which they've played a little bit better, but we still have Indiana.
Michigan State might be a train wreck by the time we play them.
Right. And then obviously I guess the bowl game doesn't count against you anymore. But I think Jameel Lyons burns the red shirt at this point. I feel like you don't play him for one snap against West Virginia unless you really made a big mistake, or you're just like, he's going to play, which I don't know exactly what that means as far as Amin Vanover, because we haven't seen Amin Vanover yet this year. So the good news is that Jameel Lyons seems to be able to, he kind of has a similar build to Amin Vanover. He's a big guy. And I think he'll hold his own when it comes to run defense. We haven't really seen that yet, but he seems to have some thickness to him. And when he hit that quarterback, I mean, he hit that guy with everything he had. I mean, he crumpled that dude. So yeah, that was one of those things. Like, sometimes people are like, oh, why did you stay to the end of these games? Like, because the guys sometimes that play later in the game actually are, I don't want to say are playing harder, but they're playing as hard, and you get to see stuff like that. So that was kind of a little treat for those fans that stayed in the stadium till the end of the game.
Yeah, there have been plenty of times that I've stayed late, and I think sometimes it drives people I'm with crazy that I want to stay to the end, but it's to see the young guys. I remember Brenton Strange scoring his first touchdown. I forget who it was against. It was a blowout game, though, and I was like, that guy looks good. I like that guy. And there have been plenty of guys like that over the years who, aren't going to be Nick Singleton their freshman year, but by their sophomore year, by their junior year, they become stars. So I kind of just like to see the stars born. Shout out to Lady Gaga.
Yeah, shout out to her. Elliott Washington had a defensive pass interference. I thought that was kind of a bullcrap call. I thought he played it really well. But something to pay attention to there. He seems a very physical corner, and he looks strong for a true freshman. He does not look like a true freshman either. Javen Williams played 25 snaps. So did Anthony Dunca. Chimney Ono played 11. Andrew Rappelier, another guy that does not look like a freshman. He looks big. He looks strong. He looks tall. And he played in 11 snaps as well. A lot of those numbers, by the way, come from the Athletic, Audrey Snyder. Shout out to Audrey Snyder. You guys already know we very much endorse Audrey Snyder's work. She's fantastic.
Yep, she's the best. Definitely subscribe to the Athletic, even if you just subscribe for her stuff. But yeah, I thought it was odd that Birkmeyer didn't play. I think he's playing at guard now. I just thought it was weird, but I mean, he might not be ready yet, and that's fine. And everybody develops at a different pace. But I just thought that was interesting. But his three classmates on the offensive line did get in, and it was good to see them play well. So overall, I was happy. Jackson Smolik, I think you mentioned, he only got in for a couple plays, and it was only because Bo scratched his arm. So didn't see a whole lot of Jackson.
No, that's okay. Andrew Redding on YouTube says, "What's up, boys?" And he says the secondary is elite. So thank you for that. Let's jump into the film room, shall we?
I'm ready for some movie.
Okay.
The play.
The play. So this is what everybody wants to talk about. I'm going to try to explain the best I can here. We talked a lot this offseason. We talked ad nauseum about this basically for a year now, that we don't think it's a Penn State size issue as much as it's a gap issue. James Franklin in the press conference after the game specifically mentioned that they need to make sure their gaps out. If they're supposed to be in the B gap, they need to be in the B gap. If they need to be in the C gap, they need to be in the C gap. Well, this is one of those situations. So first thing right off the bat, because I don't want to just sit here and blame it on one person. We do see some jet sweep motion, and at the top of your screen, you're going to see safety KJ Winston go with that motion right away, which I don't quite believe is the right thing to do, because as you can see, Abdul Carter is playing outside contain. He's in charge of keeping that edge and defending that edge. Even if that receiver is going out on a route, or something like that. KJ Winston's already kind of played more than he needs to. That receiver hasn't even crossed the center yet. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I need to mention here is that Devon Ellies, who's currently in the A gap, which is eventually going to be on the play side, is going to stunt. And he's going to stunt and cross the face of the center, as you can see here. And he's going to actually go into the backside A gap. And what's impressive here is Devon Ellies is able to take both offensive linemen. He does his job perfectly. Not only that, he kind of beats both of those guys. He's actually putting one arm on each of them, and he is taking up space perfectly. Right side is completely well defended. You have pretty much all the gaps taken care of. Dom DeLuca's right there. Just well done on the right side of your screen. Unfortunately, though, that play side B gap is wide open. And so we'll show it again. But what ends up happening is Tyler Elsdon sniffs into the wrong gap. He gets caught up on the wrong side there. They actually do a fantastic job getting Jordan Vandenberg over from the stunt as well. Everything works perfectly. Just this running back sees that backdoor cut, and he takes advantage of it. All that needed to happen was Tyler Elsdon just needs to stay home here. He sniffs a little bit inside, and that's all that's needed for this guy to take it the distance. Again, I don't really know why he went a couple steps inside. He had all the help in the world inside. He still had a safety on the other side too. If he just plays this gap perfectly and he scrapes from the backside, this goes nowhere. But again, I believe KJ Winston also needs to be in kind of a better position. You can see him right here too. He's still kind of lingering outside. At the very least, KJ Winston should be breaking down and taking his read steps. He's still actually running away from the football as the cutback's happening. So, yes, Tyler Elsdon needs to be where he needs to be as far as the gap, but KJ Winston also needs to be right here, right now, preventing this from being a touchdown. And he's out of position too. So it was a linebacker out of depth issue, but there was levels to it, and both levels were not in the right spot. So those are my thoughts there. Again, I just want to reiterate one more time, Sean. Yeah. The defensive line does a fantastic job here. I mean, you can't be any more excited about the defensive line than what they did here. They eat and they penetrate. I mean, this is perfect. So I'm very happy with the defensive line here. This is not a defensive line problem. This is a gap problem.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what I see too. When it showed on the video board, because live it's harder to tell. When I saw on the video board, I was like, Elsdon. But yes, should Elsdon have made the play? Yes, because the gap is right there for him to just stay home and make the tackle, and it's a stop at the line of scrimmage. But the safety, KJ Winston, I mean, you already have Fisher and Abdul Carter defending the jet sweep. They both do a good job keeping contained. Fisher goes out, he gets contained. Carter's playing that receiver the whole time. So that's well defended. Winston, I think, just bites a little too hard, and he vacates the area he needs to be. So it's not all on Elsdon, but dude, like, you can't make that mistake. And unfortunately with him, he's not very quick. So if he makes a mistake, if he makes a mental error, his errors kind of get amplified. And I don't want to put it all on one guy, because it's not all on one guy. But dude, you got to make the play, and you can't afford to have mental errors. So it was just a bad play all around. Luckily, that was one of probably the only really bad play of the whole game from any unit. So
yeah,
perspective.
I just want to give some love to Kavion Keys here too, because he actually does a fantastic job here of setting the edge perfectly. I love that outside shoulder attack. Kavion Keys did a great job there, number 6. So not everything's bad in every play. Again, Devon Ellies, I thought, did a great job on that.
That was
play.
Sakee Wheatley.
Oh, this is Wheatley. 6.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry. What
No,
number's Keys?
Old.
Is he single digit too?
I think he's 48. Oh, yep, 48.
So I wasn't even close. Thank you for the correction there.
No
I don't know why I thought that was Kavion Keys. I saw a lanky guy by the edge. No, this is a great job by Wheatley, especially then. Safety setting the edge. Very nice. Okay. Wanted to show this play next. So what we're seeing here, 3rd and 10, we decided to run the football. But what I really am impressed by here is the blocking. So right off the bat, Vega Ione, number 71, is going to get in a hole here, and he's going to lock on. And then look at that seam, just perfect for Katron Allen. But it's the consistency and the blocking through that I love. And what I mean by that is watch the rest of these offensive linemen eat. Watch 74 Olu Fashion at the very top. He puts his guy on the dirt. Now I want you to go back and watch Sal Wormley, number 77, just put his guy on the dirt. I mean, just beautiful job by both of those guys. And then I talked about the wide receivers once before, but watch Theo Johnson and Sean and Liam Clifford set this up beautifully. Pretend like they're running a route, and then watch them just stock block and get the inside. I mean, that's just phenomenal that Theo Johnson is able to get his butt turned around and is able to seal that so well. Liam Clifford, same thing. Phenomenal job there. Like, you can't ask for better inside blocking by your wide receivers. And then Keandre Lambert-Smith does a good job as well. So just all around fantastic blocking there. Couldn't ask for anything better. It made Katron Allen's life super duper easy on a 3rd and 10.
Did you hear the new breakfast establishment going in State College? It's going to compete with the Waffle Shop. It's called the Pancake Shop. And Olu Fashanu and Sal Wormley are opening it.
I mean, just Sal Wormley.
Sal Wormley takes this guy into the next stratosphere. So
that's the second week in a row now we brought up Sal Wormley going the extra mile to put someone on their back, which is awesome. So shout out to Sal Wormley for back-to-back film room dominance. You'd like to see maybe Hunter Norzad lock in a little bit longer. I think he actually might slip a little bit, but he still does a pretty good job. It looks like he actually might got hit from,
Yep.
Yeah, might have actually got hit from behind. But still, solid job there. And the only other one I wanted to show, I'll have a full film breakdown at some point. Just one more real quick here. 3rd and 6, minute 30 left in the second quarter. Delaware is going to just try to blitz or try to just drop back to pass, and they just don't have any chance. First thing, watch Chop Robinson, number 44 here. Watch his get off. I'm going to pause this. Some defensive linemen are just getting out of their stance. This dude's already a yard in the backfield. Just shoots off like a rocket. I mean, you just can't beat that. And then I don't know if you guys watched any of the Cowboys last night, but watch Abdul Carter slice through this like a hot knife through butter. I mean, he looks like Micah Parsons on this. Look at this, right? One move, doesn't slow down, and he's through. I mean, one more time. Just you can't even, he doesn't even slow down at all. I mean, that's just incredible how fast he gets through. And then obviously, I can't believe they didn't call the holding penalty on Chop Robinson there, because that's one of the most just outrageous no calls I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, Chop Robinson just lost all of his money. He was just completely mugged in the backfield. And then good blocking down, or good pass protection. My goodness, good pass coverage downfield as well. But that quarterback had no chance on that play, because Penn State's 2 best pass rushers, Abdul Carter and Chop Robinson, completely ruined the play.
Yeah, that was snuffed out from the start. I mean, that get off, that's elite stuff. Like that translates so well into playing tougher opponents, because you could get off the ball the same way against a lesser opponent as you do against a better opponent. Like that's just something that's a skill. And then, like you said, Abdul just, like, it's no problem. and the play is totally snuffed off from the beginning, and then it leads to an errant throw. So, I mean, yeah, not much more you could ask for from the defensive front seven there.
Yeah, and those listening on podcasts, we'll probably clip those up like we did last week, social media wise, so you'll be able to see them on Twitter, on Instagram, TikTok at some point as well. But yeah, those are fun. Anything else, Sean, before we get to the fan questions?
Well, I mean, there's the play, and we're gonna, you could go back over that 100 times. But I mean, I think there are like an infinite amount. Well, not infinite because there was a set number of plays we had, but you could probably find 50 to 60 plays that we did something really, really well on Saturday. And that's what you want. That's in a 63-7 game, there's going to be a lot of positives. And it's easy to hyper focus on a negative play. I'm going to choose not to do that. I mean, we know the concerns that we have with Tyler Elston. And some of the, and not just him, but some of the concerns we have about the run defense through 2 games. I think they've been a little overblown, but I mean, you have to take so many more positives out of that game. So I'm feeling about as good as I could feel going into this next game. And I think what perfectly encapsulates the feeling right now, the fan base. I was looking around, end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, the whole student section is full. And there aren't a lot of empty seats. I'm like, Jesus, this is Delaware. And the excitement is just palpable in the stadium. And this is a noon game against Delaware. These kids could be out in the parking lot still, never come into the game. And granted, they probably came in the game for about an hour, a lot of them. But still, they came in. They were interested enough to come in. And the fans are interested enough. They were at the game last week, ended at about 11 o'clock. Come to the game for a noon game the next week. I mean, I think that just shows you how pumped this fan base is, and they should be.
Yeah, 108,000 plus. And it wasn't like one of those ones where it was like 108,000 or wasn't 108,000 people there.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it was full.
No, it was full. It was a full house.
And there's a chance of rain for most of the day, and it didn't scare people off, which is also very nice to see as well. So, yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, Sean. All right, let's go to some fan questions. You know what? Let me do the one on Instagram first before I forget. So I think I forgot last week, and I felt pretty bad because that is from our longtime listener of the show, Tyler. And Tyler says, who did you enjoy watching during the second half today, and what do you expect from this team at Illinois next week? Let's just answer that first part, Sean. Who did you enjoy watching maybe that didn't play or isn't a starter?
I think go Trey Potts. I mean, making the most of your opportunity. And you think of Trey Potts, is at Minnesota, has a good chance to at least be the second string guy this year, if not the starter, chooses to come home, play for the place that he wanted to be at from the beginning, chooses to be the third back, knows that going in. When he gets and what his numbers called, he makes the most of his opportunity. I mean, that's kind of what college football is all about, right? A guy like that playing for his hometown team, and when he's called upon, he answers. So I loved seeing. Yeah, I mean, I think he had the longest run of the day, so that was really awesome. And we might need him in a bigger moment this year. And I have a lot of faith that guy's going to come through for us. I'm going to go Trey Potts.
Yeah, that was a good answer. That was probably going to be my answer. Maybe not someone that just only plays in the second half, but I'm gonna go with Zane Durant. I thought he did some really good things, and I know that he didn't play just in the first half, but he got that sack in the second half. But I just think Zane Durant is a guy that maybe hasn't put it all together yet in a game, and he's still very young. But I really think that moment in that game is going to happen soon. He's a very athletic, very strong individual who is starting to finally get the more game reps you get, the closer I think you get to that realization. And I think he's very close to that. And so I enjoy watching him. I really enjoy watching Zane Durant on film after the fact. And I think Zane Durant's very, very close. He's probably benefiting the most from Keziah Izzard not playing as far as snaps. And um, yeah, I think Devon Elliott, to be honest with you, he's already kind of gotten there. I think Zane Durant, his moment's coming.
Yeah, he showed his athleticism too. I remember one play that sticks out to me. He had to run downfield a little bit. They were breaking off huge yards, but he ran downfield a little bit to prevent a first down. He prevented the running back. So he shows he's already flashed his athleticism. That's a good pick, Cory. I like it.
Thank you. Let's go to Twitter now.
More like X.
Right. This question's from Max Levitz. When do you think we will see the tight end production pick up? Seems they wanted to use them more in protection for Drew's first couple of starts, which is understandable, but everyone knows how big that tight end room can be for the offense. Well, they doubled their amount of targets from week 1 to week 2. So I feel like they're already starting to do that. As far as like results go, I think some of it is not going to be the answer you want to hear, because to me, production includes blocking really well. So I attribute a lot of their running success to the tight ends, which to me is production. As far as just straight up catching the ball and scoring touchdowns, I think it can happen any game. And again, I don't think it's going to be something where it shows up and then it's the only thing Penn State does. I think it's going to ebb and flow with everything else. There are going to be games where Singleton and Allen combine for 4 touchdowns. There are probably going to be games where Ty Warren and Theo Johnson combine for 3 touchdowns. But I don't think it's going to be because they're specifically trying to get something more involved than the other. It's just going to be the way, however the game goes and however the defense plays it. Just kind of where things are at right now. I will say again, I'll remind everybody, it wasn't until the Minnesota game where we really saw the tight ends getting more involved. So if you need a deadline for this, at least give them, say, until the end of October. I guess that would be the fair equivalent. But I think you see more touchdowns in the near future for the tight ends.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the tight ends are playing very well. And I think James Franklin thinks that the tight ends are playing very well. He mentioned that, he didn't hear any complaints from the tight ends parents, because in today's day and age, you hear from the parents all the time. He said no, because they knew what to do and they executed well. So it's not like they're playing poorly. I do understand the point, though. Like, you want to see them get more involved. I think it's almost a credit to the receivers, though. I think the receivers have played better than we've expected so far this season. And it's just kind of been their turn to shine, and they've done that. So I think part of it's a credit to the receivers, and it's not quite that we're not targeting the tight ends that much. I think that's kind of the wrong way to look at it. It's more that the tight end or the receivers have just played a little bit better than I think most people have expected.
That's a really good point, Sean. That's a very good point. And they're blocking well too. The wide receivers are.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
There's some really good questions here, and I want to kind of do them in order from like leaving Delaware and then kind of looking ahead in Illinois. Let's go with, man, I want to save that question for later. Let's save that. Let's go to this one. This is from Will Gamble. Do you think Penn State is holding back or not showing as much in the big pass play schemes for when they play harder opponents? This has always been an interesting question because I swear some fans think the offensive coordinator is just holding on to all these tricks and all of their touchdown plays to show against Ohio State. And then you're like, well, by that margin, we should have already ran the 6 touchdown plays already that we had in our hands, right? Like, why first 6 plays of Ohio State on offense, we should score 6 touchdowns because they got all these tricks up our sleeves. So I think that gets blown out of proportion way too much. That like the offense isn't trying to show things. For most intent, for all intents and purposes, the offense has already been installed, and so each week they can't just come up with a bajillion new things to install. It's not like they have a whole month to prepare for a team. Now, they have things they can build off of as far as personnel groupings and formations and adding different motions. And, it's easy to add combo routes to certain, formations for different passing schemes, et cetera, for what you're going to face. But there's only so many wrinkles you can install that are completely brand new or brand new ideas. And so you're not going to see that many more different formations and different personnel groups than what you've seen. We've already shown you the 12 personnel they use. We talked about the formation where they had the 2 tight ends and the running back out on one side and the 2 wide receivers on the other side. We saw that again against Delaware, by the way. That being said, yes, I'm sure there are things that they try not to show, but you also have to win the football game. And so I don't like this idea that Penn State's just holding back their arsenal for a later point. Now, you could also argue the more you put out there, the more someone has to defend and spend time defending and figuring out how to scheme again. So I think there's things that go both ways there on. At the end of the day, the offensive coordinator is going to tell you that they can score a touchdown on every play if it's blocked right. And so every play should be a touchdown until something goes wrong or until somebody's beat. So that's my thoughts on it. We've asked people before that question, like previous guests on the show, and I feel like their answer unanimously was like, yes, there are things, but I think fans take it a little bit out of proportion, Sean.
Yeah, I think Drew Aller said on his interview with Brenneman that they have over 200 plays or something. And obviously, you can't run them all in 2 weeks. And one of the opponents is Delaware. So, I mean, there's a school of thought that they're going to keep things very vanilla for Delaware, which I would argue they did. There was the flea flicker, but yeah, largely things were pretty vanilla. Drew has only gone downfield once this whole season. Now, I'm talking like there were 9 games played, but in 2 games, he only went downfield once in the Keandre Lambert-Smith throw. Now, could he do it? Absolutely. That guy can make any throw on the football field. So, do I think they're going to be more aggressive play calls as the season goes on? I do. I absolutely do. So, in a way, at this moment right now, do I think they're holding some stuff back? Yes, to a degree. Now, last year, we got this question a couple times, and early on in the season, I gave a very similar answer to what I'm giving now, but then we were asked in like November, and I was like, what are we holding on for? I mean, there's nothing we're not going to we don't just hold on to things like, ooh, this one we're going to reveal against Michigan State, and this one's going to be in the bowl game. No, that's not how it works. But do I think they think, well, we're going to show this wrinkle later in the season. There's no use in showing against Delaware. Absolutely. So yes, to answer your question, yes, I still think there's things you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, let's go to this next question from R. Scats. Will there be a change in a linebacker rotation going forward? More of Kavion Keys and Tamir Robinson, maybe Abdul Carter at the mic, and more Tony Rojas. Yeah, this was a popular question because all of Twitter decided to really just come out against Tyler Elsdon. I think it's important to remember that Tyler Elsdon is not the starter right now. Kobe King is a starter in the middle. And I don't know if people notice this or not, but Tyler Elsdon played a lot more with the backups than a lot of the other starters did, quote unquote starters did. And so I think they are trying to get Tyler Elsdon some more meaningful reps. I don't want this to be the Tyler Elsdon crap on episode. But I really felt like he read defenses better last year. So I think he just maybe needs to get out of whatever funk he's in, and he'll rebound from this, because last year it wasn't so much of him being out of position as much as it was sometimes he just didn't finish. Right now he's just not in the right position to make plays. That wasn't necessarily the same issue we had last year. So I don't think this is like an epidemic thing with him. To get to the actual question, no, I don't think they're going to be a rotation. Again, besides a 66-yard run for a touchdown, Penn State played phenomenal on defense. And I really think Curtis Jacobs is much more effective at that Sam. And I think 100% Abdul Carter is much more effective at the will. It gives them freedom to make plays, and you want your playmakers to have that freedom to do so. The Mike, I don't want to say you're more restricted, but you kind of are more restricted to following your rules and having to kind of read your cues and your keys. Abdul Carter can kind of fly around and do his own thing. Curtis Jacobs can fly around and do his own thing. I don't think you want to lose that aspect. And I know Manny Diaz doesn't want to lose that aspect of his defense. I don't really know what to expect from Kayvon Keys. I do think, and he didn't mention him, I do think Keon Wiley should probably play a little bit more. Keon Wiley, I thought, looked pretty good on Saturday. And I think he did play a little bit more. And I do think, remember, Tamir Robinson, if you include the blue and white game, has played in 3 games now in 2 years, Sean? So Tamir Robinson probably still getting back on track as far as just playing football again. But I do think Tamir Robinson is someone to pay attention to, say, a late bloomer in sometime in October or November that's finally remembering how to do all this again, and all the rust is finally shaken off. But no, 2 weeks in, I think we're good with what we have. You just kind of have to keep getting experience while keep getting reps. But overall, I mean, they're playing really well at the linebacker spot. They just got to be a little bit more gap sound to prevent some of those huge gashes.
Yeah, overall they were better this week. I thought Abdul Carter played a better game for sure. I thought the rest of the linebackers overall played well. Dom DeLuca, I don't know how he got so long without mentioning Dom DeLuca had his pick 6. Go buy a sauce. So overall, yeah. Now, to answer the question, I mean, I don't really like sometimes the fans tend to have a whipping boy where we just blame everything on this one guy. And last year was Cliff, or everything was blamed on Sean Clifford anytime something went wrong with the offense. And I think that's just part. I'm not saying Penn State fans specifically, but that's part of fandom, right? Like, oh, we have our guys that we never criticize, and then we have guys that we just blame everything on, and it's neither one is right. You got to just call it like you see it. Have I seen Tyler Elsdon struggle this year? I have. I mean, I have eyes, and we've talked about it both weeks. In the event he continues to struggle, do I think that there have to be some changes made? I do. I'm willing to say at some point, I don't think I'm ready to say it yet, because I still think it makes sense from, what we have. I still think from what we have right now, it makes sense going forward to play them both. I think eventually you have to think about maybe giving the reins over to Kobe King to be the full-time middle linebacker when he needs a blow. You think about moving Abdul Carter inside, or putting him at the mic, just not, playing 30 plays there, but whenever Kobe needs to come out. And then you might bring in a Tony Rojas. You might bring in a Dom DeLuca to fill in. I think it's something you have to think about. Cory mentioned Keon Wiley. Sure. I think I would say, though, if Keon Wiley was better than Tyler Elsdon, wouldn't he be playing already? Now, you could say if the gap's not that big at practice, maybe you do give him a shot. But I'm not 100% ready to commit to that right now.
Yeah, I think what you have is a potential temporary fix. I think ideally a Keon Wiley or Tamir Robinson would be the long-term solution. Keon Wiley just was hurt last year for so much, that he's finally getting a chance to be healthy and showing what he's got. And so I just be very curious to see the maturation of him throughout the year as well, him and Tamir Robinson. But I agree, like you could bring in a Rojas, you could bring in a DeLuca and move people around a little bit. I I struggle to see Carter going to the mic because we hadn't seen that yet. But you could do it. I could see we've seen Jacobs move inside and DeLuca coming in, but yeah, you have options for like a temporary in the middle of the game fix. As far as long term, I think you want to see just again Kobe King dominate, take it over, right? Clearly take it over, and then see some of the younger guys continue to mature, and see Elzen get better as well.
Yeah, the best case scenario is Elston just gets better, right? Because he already has that experience. We know he could play in the middle. But that's just in case of emergency.
Yeah, let's go. Last two questions here. I really like this question from Mark Thomas. While only 2 weeks into the season, based on what we've seen from Penn State and their future opponents, have any perceptions changed of teams on the schedule? Any road trips seem more or less daunting? And I love this question. I think it's a fantastic question. So it gives us a chance to recalibrate. A lot of times people don't recalibrate 2 weeks in the seasons, aka the AP poll. Yes, I think things have changed a little bit for me. Right off the bat, I am not yet worried about Ohio State. Now, could they have it all figured out by the time Penn State plays them? Yes. But offensively, I think Ohio State still has some things to work out. I don't know if they are as explosive. Mind you, they still have really good wide receivers as I thought they were going to be at this point in the year. I thought that Youngstown State was going to be a get-right game for them. So there's that. I don't want to say I was worried about Maryland, but Maryland does not seem to be as good as maybe they sometimes look in September, being the September Warriors that they can be. Rutgers defense looks better than they were good last year, but they look better too. They have a big game against Virginia Tech, but Rutgers could be 3-0 here against two Power 5 opponents. So Rutgers is looking better. Can just quickly tell you Indiana looks about the same. Michigan State looks about the same as I thought. And then to be honest with you, we thought Illinois' secondary was going to be a little bit worse because they just lost so much. The loss against Kansas kind of showed that. And obviously we'll talk a lot more about Illinois this week. But I do have a little bit less impression of them. And my impression of Michigan, Sean, hasn't changed. I still think they're very good. And Northwestern, yeah, it's Northwestern.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you watched the game with Illinois last Friday. They got beat pretty bad by Kansas. The score ended up being a little closer at the end than it actually was. But at one point they were down 35-7. And I think Kansas has a good team, but I don't think they're a team that you really want to be down by 4 scores against, especially when you have the number 7 team in the country coming to town. Iowa pretty much think the same. Northwestern's Northwestern. UMass. Yeah, Ohio State. I mean, I haven't been impressed yet by them. And I think they might for the first time since Luke Fickell. No, they had Braxton Miller. God, back in the Tressel days, I don't even know what quarterback, because even in the Tressel days, they were always they were always all right at quarterback. Ohio State, I don't think they have one right now. And that could change. Ryan Day's a brilliant play caller, brilliant play designer. But yeah, if I had a vote in the AP poll, which I do not, I would rank Penn State above Ohio State because I don't want to use last year, my preseason mentality to justify my ranking. And I would have Florida State 1, Texas 2, because they were the 2 teams that did something. They did the better, that they did something more than everybody else. But AP voters really don't think like me. Side point. Indiana, yeah, not very good. Maryland struggled with Charlotte, so Yeah, Michigan's really good. Rutgers, I agree with you. Rutgers, their defense has looked solid, and Michigan State, they have a lot of problems right now. So I'm probably less worried about that one than I was. And going into the season, I wasn't very worried about them at all. So that's where we're at right now in our schedule. So overall, I think you got to feel pretty good, guys. I'm feeling pretty good about my 11-1 prediction.
Yeah. Michigan State plays Washington this weekend, and I would just tell people to be careful about that because I think they're 16-point underdogs right now. I think a lot of people are jumping on that. Sometimes you got to be careful of the wounded animal mode. Michigan State might be in wounded animal
Yeah,
mode
they could
there.
rally.
And so just it's an interesting game to be. I would just stay away from it personally if I'm betting money. Just gonna say financial advice, but I wouldn't bet on it. You just don't too unpredictable what to expect. It's at home for them. You just don't know, and they could honestly lose by 50, or they could win by 1 point. I think it's either one or the other. But yeah, Michigan State. We'll know a lot more about Michigan State before Penn State plays them. So
yeah.
Final question before we get out of here. This is from longtime listener Dorito Bandit. With how badly Illinois has played and the history between Penn State and Iowa, what's your level of concern Penn State overlooks Illinois and ends up struggling to win? So basically, a look-ahead game to Iowa, trap game against Illinois. So Penn State's not really ready to rock and roll, and they end up playing Illinois closer than the experts think, Sean.
I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Well, going into the year, I felt better about the Iowa game than I did about Illinois. And maybe I feel different now, but not much. I know because I know what Illinois is going to do. They're very predictable in that it's going to be a rough and tumble game. And we might end up winning by 20, 25 points. Not saying that. And we probably should. But they're going to make us earn those points. So I think they're keenly aware of that, especially after the 2021 just terrible game. And a lot of these guys were on the team when that happened. And they remember that taste in their mouth. And I have a lot of trouble thinking they're going to let that be a repeat performance. So I don't think the look ahead thing is as much of a concern because I think they already take them seriously. And it's not like in 2021 where Illinois had terrible teams going back 5 years. They were a good team last year. They had guys that are going to be playing on Sundays for years to come. Problem for them is they lost a lot of those guys, but I think they're going to take these guys seriously.
Hard to understand how much they look into the 1-0 mindset. I think they do a pretty good job of it, but there's something about too. I don't subscribe to the whole trap game thing when it's your first road game. This is the first time Penn State goes on the road, and there's something about maybe monotonous if you had back-to-back road games before a home game, and maybe you kind of overlook that second road game a little bit. But this is the first time Penn State's going on the road this year. I would find it hard to believe that Drew Aller is not going to be laser focused on this game, given that's his first start on the road. I'm just not subscribing to this trap game idea right now. Now, does that mean it's going to matter in the long run? I don't know, but they still have to execute. I don't think it's going to be because they're looking ahead to Iowa. Maybe if Iowa came out and scored 50 points on each of their teams, you'd be a little bit more concerned offensively or defensively facing their offense. I don't think anyone's worried about Iowa's offense. They failed to reach their 25-point goal, I think, again against, or did they get to 27? What was the score of that game?
I'll look right now.
They might have got there. Did they get? I think it was 27-20.
Nope, 20-13.
2013. Yeah, okay. I didn't think they got there. So they are falling behind quickly on their 25 points per game goal that they need to reach. So no, I don't think it's going to happen, Dorito. I really, when you look at the schedule, there's not that many opportunities for that kind of sleeper game. At this point, I mentioned, and I always said this from the beginning of the season, I wasn't falling for the Illinois one before the season started. I thought the Maryland one, if you had to choose one, the Maryland one was at least a little bit more because it's before they play Michigan at home, and you at least kind of have that home environment. But I mean, I just don't see it really this year. And knock on wood, obviously, as we get into it, but I don't think so, Dorito.
So you're not too worried about the Minutemen either, huh?
No,
Tripping us up before Ohio State. Okay.
no.
Yeah.
Although it is coming off the bye, and the record against the bye is not good.
Good point. Good point. I mean, I am happy that we play UMass off the bye. I will say that bye isn't right in the middle of UMass and Ohio State, but is for whatever reason we still can't figure bye weeks out. But yeah, I mean, I definitely take Illinois seriously, not just as a trap game, but just as a game in general.
Yeah. 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 But those are some good questions. We get the questions like last second this week. So last second this week. So they came in like right before the show started. But thank you guys for getting those questions in. We actually ran a little bit longer tonight. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us. I think another episode of The Pocket with Christian Hackenberg is going to be up sometime tomorrow as well. So make sure you guys check that on State Media. We're over 1,500 subscribers on State Media, which I am just going to speak for Sean and I and say it's all because of us. So thank you guys so much for listening. And if you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Yes, hit that subscribe button, please.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk Illinois and to prepare you for the weekend. So that being said, Sean, any final thoughts?
No. I'm ready to do the Illinois preview. Should be fun. I'm looking forward to that. There are some players. I know we talked a lot about guys that left. There are some players that I'm worried about for this week. So Franklin's press conference is tomorrow as a reminder. So tune into that. Take a look. You could take a look at that if you want. So you can compare what we saw, what we noticed in the press conference compared to what you saw. So yeah, I think we covered quite a bit tonight, Cory.
Yeah, I think so too. And film breakdown at some point tomorrow as well. So
awesome.
Thank you guys so much for listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. That was Sean Kane. I'm Cory Lestochi. See you next time, everybody.